Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to a brand new movie review. I'm Chris Garner, today joined with George Aldridge and Tayte to give our review on Blade Runner 2049, which is the sequel to Ridley Scott's original Blade Runner film, directed by Denis Villeneuve. I think we've got the pronunciation right this time on that one, starring Ryan Gosling and Harrison Ford. This is probably going to be a bit of an epic review on this one because we've got a lot to talk about. I saw the movie for the first time like midweek. Tayte, when did you see it?
I saw it yesterday.
And George, you're like fresh out the cinema as of like
an hour ago.
An hour, yeah.
Like, yeah, literally.
It's a long movie. It's about a 3-hour movie, but we've got a lot to cover here. As always, this will be a review in 2 parts. We'll start off with spoiler-free, and we'll get to spoilers later. Don't worry, we will give nothing away for this first half. We'll do our very level best. And I actually think it's going to be a very tough movie to talk about in spoiler-free. It probably won't be a very long section. Yeah. But I guess we'll kick off with like initial thoughts then when the sequel was first announced and when Villeneuve was brought on board. Like, what was sort of going through your heads? Because we're all fans of the original Blade Runner on this channel as well.
You go first, George.
I literally didn't understand why the hell this was made, and I still don't. But you know what? It was made, and at least they put together a good team, and at least they didn't reboot the old one with the remake like Sony keep doing. This is a Sony film, by the way. Not that they have to glare the Sony logo like before the credits start as well. They just had to get it in there every minute. But I was totally opposed to this. And then they brought Denis Villeneuve on. And suddenly I was like, okay, I'm slightly better with this, and I'm not really feeling it still because Harrison Ford's on his retirement run. Because obviously at this point Force Awakens was announced. Then they brought Ryan Gosling in, and that kind of raised a couple of eyebrows. Like, okay, I'm kind of down with this. Like, I do quite like him as an actor, to be fair to him. And slowly it was getting better, and I was still very skeptic. And that first trailer came out, and I wasn't totally blown away. The visuals looked amazing, but you want more than that. You want a good story. Then the second trailer came out, and there was a lot of explosions, and I thought, okay, this must be marketing going wild. And then over time, the more I've thought about it, the slight backwards feeling, but it was up until the reviews come out where I was really behind this film. Seeing not just people on the internet like us, seeing legitimate film critics, people like you, Mark Commode, them types that thoroughly enjoyed it, and the reaction this has had. And if you look at the promoting, Gosling and Harrison Ford, he's Harrison Ford, but he's been more passionate in interviews with this than I've seen him in any Star Wars when he did. And I genuinely think that he actually would have come back had he not done any other films at this point. So I was behind it, and then I was excited, and now I've seen it.
Tell you, how about you?
Personally, for me, I was completely against the film. I was still against it even when Denis was brought on board, because I was just thinking it's still completely useless, it's pointless. But then when the first trailer came out, it didn't show much. I think it just showed Ryan Gosling walking down the street with the street cleaners coming through. There wasn't much to it. My interest and started to kind of get me on board with the film. And then the first few actual trailers came out showing off the story. And I was a bit excited. But I can tell you guys now, the trailers do not paint the picture of the film that you're going to go see. The trailers show off this massively action-heavy sci-fi film with not much content and very little mystery behind it. This film is all mystery and it is all content, with the action used very, very well within it. It's what I can consider to be one of the better sequels from films over the years, as far as rebooting films are concerned. It delivered on every level that I thought it could have, and there's only a few real negatives I actually have for it. But personally, I seriously enjoyed it, and it was a very good film.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement with you, Tayte, in that, you know, in my mind, it was a sequel that never needed to be made. And I think it's different because a lot of things are rebooted now, or they'll do a soft reboot or whatever it is, or a sequel so many years after the fact, and they never seem to capture the magic. But I think with Blade Runner, it was different because it is a film that is held in such high regard, like one of the most influential films, I would say, in general, certainly for the sci-fi genre. And it's at this stage now where would it be oh, this is like a Blade Runner film for the modern generation, and they were going to change it so much and sort of abandon everything that made the first one great. But then it was when Villeneuve was brought on board. He's probably one of my favorite directors in the business right now. Arrival was fantastic. Prisoners, Sicario. So I was interested with it from just him, like that he was on board. He was going to oversee this entire film. And I did think that he would do the film justice. But when the trailers came out, I too was kind of underwhelmed by them a little bit. Not to say they were bad, like I did reactions on most of the trailers that came out, but there was just something that felt like it was missing. I got the impression that it was going to be an all-out action film, and that's what the trailers made it out to look like. High-speed chases through the sky and the flying police cars and explosions, and that's never what Blade Runner was. And I really wanted it to be true to the feel of Blade Runner. But when all the reviews came out for it, I mean, this was getting like 10 out of 10s, 5 out of 5s, positive reviews all across the board. That's when I started to get on board with it more. And as Tayte said, when you watch this film, the trailers, I can understand why the trailers would do that. Blade Runner is a very slow burn film. This is also a very slow burn film. I think this is about 164 minutes. But this is still definitely of the like and mind of the original film. It feels like a logical progression as to where the story would go following 30 years from the original Blade Runner. And I don't think it abandons any of the ideals. If anything, it builds on the things that have been established in the first film.
Yeah.
But also has an identity of its own and has its own story to tell on top of that as well.
I'd say with if we're comparing this to recent reboots of franchises, to compare to ones that have worked and ones that haven't worked, I would say that this film enhanced your experience of the original Blade Runner even. There were elements to the story which, in this film, allow you to understand a bit more of the original film and get a bit more of the universe and everything like that. That's something that Mad Max was a very good film, but just didn't do. It was its own standalone film, and it's what I haven't seen Genesis, Terminator Genesis, but I've heard that it actually does the exact opposite and makes the previous films seem worse.
No one has any reason to watch that movie, Tayte. Don't even.
Hey, it's on Netflix at the moment, so people will watch it. But this film actually does an incredible task and makes you want to go back and watch the first film and then go back and watch this film.
Yeah.
And it links the universe completely together and does a really good job with kind of extending the arm out from the original film and bridging the gap.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I was going to say something there. I think I lost my trail of thought on that one. Back to you, George. So we'll kick off with biggest positive and biggest negative of the film. Again, spoiler-free, so if you can manage that, yeah, go for it.
Biggest positive. There's so many. I would actually say Ryan Gosling. I don't want to say the performance. Right, I don't know. It's whether I'm still trying to get over watching La La Land and how much I suddenly like him again. Now, well, yeah. I think going into specifics, it's the coat. That's the main thing. But no, I can't talk about the biggest positive about this film because it's a fuck off major spoiler.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's in the first scene as well. That's how important the spoiler is. So I just want to say that the character arc of Ryan Gosling is arguably the best thing about this film, but I love everything else. But going off a neutral, spoiler-free version, then maybe the biggest positive is Roger Deakins and the cinematography, because it's stunning. Yeah. It's like the original, but made in modern day, and that's what improves that experience with the film.
Mm-hmm.
You see, as far as the cinematography is concerned, when I came out of the cinema, my immediate thought was the film looked too clean. As compared to the original was very dirty and gritty. You go into the police station and it's not all built up. It's very run down. Everything feels like it's got dust on and everything like that. And it allows you to make the film feel timeless. This film feels like the future.
Well, it is, because it's 32 years later and Jared Leto's created all of the
However,
replicants.
The previous film, even though it's set in the future, felt like the past.
I think it's down to the stories. If you look at the era, what they've done with the replicants in this film, it's so hard to talk about, has drastically improved the conditions on Earth, and they make that point with the opening shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is all. It's so hard.
Yeah, no, the cinematography in this film is phenomenal. Okay, my biggest positive I have to say is the acting, and that comes from multiple characters. That comes from Ryan Gosling. That comes from even Harrison Ford, who didn't phone in a performance. I thought he was going to phone this one in before the film. I'm not going to lie. Jared Leto, when he was on screen, did a decent enough job. And then some of the background characters who, before going to the film, you wouldn't actually think would be major characters, but turned out to be big in the film. We'll talk about those possibly in the spoiler section. But they actually had some of the best acting on the screen, and had some of the best lines and had some of the best moments of the film to themselves. This film felt very complete. And yeah, the biggest negative, I would say, and I know Chris is probably going to say exactly the same thing, is the music.
Yes. Yeah.
The music was good as far as sci-fi films are concerned, but you're comparing it up against the original Blade Runner soundtrack. And when I got out of the cinema, the first film that I thought of was Oblivion, not Blade Runner, as far as soundtracks were concerned. And that's never a good thing. Oblivion has a brilliant soundtrack, but I feel like if this soundtrack was too quiet, it was too background noisy, it only came out in like 2 moments, and it could have been so much more. And it's a surprise
I didn't think
from
the
Hans
score
Zimmer.
was quiet by any I thought it was
No,
I'm
on the
it was
opposite.
really noisy. And,
I thought it was either the film's silent for the dramatic scenes, and then you get loud synths.
Sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah.
With the soundtrack, like I'm not really fazed by it. I'm more intrigued about the background drama of what happened to Johan Johansson, because it's come out that for contractual reasons he is not allowed to talk about why he was removed.
And he's not even credited on anything in
no,
this.
Not at all, because originally it was Hans Zimmer and someone else have joined the project, and now it's just them two, and he's gone. So I would be very intrigued to find out what happened there.
I heard rumours that he couldn't. I think you told me, didn't you, George?
Yeah, there's a rumour he couldn't get the synth, but I don't think they'd sacked someone for that. I think there'd be a lot more to it. But the soundtrack, it felt, I wouldn't say it's the worst thing. I haven't really listened to it outside, so I don't have much of an opinion, but it didn't hit me as much as the previous film did.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very hard soundtrack to live up to the reputation of. Given that there was a couple of weeks for them. I'd say they probably had 2 months to do this soundtrack. Whereas you've got to look at someone like Rogue One, very different, because you could just chuck in a Star Wars thing, Michael Giacchino. But this is a very, very specific coding to how they should have done it. And I feel that the soundtrack only sounded half memorable when Harrison Ford came in. And I think that was an intentional choice to try and make it sound like the old ones. And I think they used one of the old songs in the last scene. Yeah. But
yeah, they did. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the music I wasn't fazed by a bit. I've never been a massive fan of the original Blade Runner soundtrack. I'm in a massive minority on that. But it was noticeable how different this one was.
I know we've got a section later on talking about the music, so I'll touch on a bit there. For me, the biggest positive was basically what you guys have said. The cinematography in this film is outstanding, and this is clearly going to get a nomination. It might even win, but there has been a lot of great cinematography this year for many films so far, and many yet to come. My biggest negative, I kind of have 2. These by no means break the film for me, but I didn't think it was a perfect film, as most reviewers would have you believe. Biggest negative for me, there are 2 plot points in this film that I can think of that seem to be raised, like they're going to be paid off at the end of the movie, and they seem like they're just swept under the rug or completely forgotten about. One of those is kind of one of the main characters, at least one of the background characters kind of overseeing everything. And the other is like what I thought was going to be the climax of the movie, in all honesty, and it just seemed like they forgot about that entire plot point. Maybe there's a 4-hour cut out there somewhere, and they had to like trim it down for time, or 3.5-hour cut. I don't know, or maybe they're leaving it open.
Let's be honest here. There will be another cut to this film.
Oh yeah.
No, I don't know.
There'll be like 16 different versions, like the first Blade Runner film. It'll be fucking absurd.
I think someone will make a joint cut. There'll be a cut between the original Blade Runner, the 3 short films, and this film. Or they'll cut the 3 short, or they'll cut 2 of the 3 short films into the actual film.
What about a prequel trilogy and Jared Leto and how he became blind?
Too much honka honka.
All the honka. And another negative I had, and again, sort of jumping ahead with this one, the set design was great, but it didn't. The first film, the world building and the lived-in world, you saw a lot more street level in the first film. And I don't even know if I can raise this a negative, because this might be the different take and how the city life has changed in 30 years between the films. But this one felt a lot more broader and not kind of as intimate as the first film. The first one, you had loads of very
The first film, he doesn't
crowded
leave the city.
streets. Yeah,
he does not leave the city. In this film, he leaves the city on multiple occasions.
Yeah, you've got like the first film had like the big cityscapes from like the bird's eye view, but it also honed in on really claustrophobic, like tight knit streets, packed full of people, bars. It felt grimy. Had people around at night. This one, you get a few moments where you get like the brothels and everything like that, and a few clubs, but it never felt like it achieved the same level as the first film. They're really my only negatives of the film. As I said, they don't ruin the film for me, but I didn't think it was as perfect as some people are saying. If we get into the performances now then, and again, we're trying to keep this spoiler-free, so we'll do as best as we can. We've sort of touched on it already, but Ryan Gosling, I thought he was fantastic in this film, and I can't really talk about this. From the trailers, he seemed really boring and disinterested. Kind of like, I guess you could argue how most of the performances are in the first film. But I made my argument for that in our Blade Runner review, that it kind of fits the world, how it's a really bleak look into the future and everyone seems run down and mundane. But he managed to bring a lot of humanity to the role, I think. And he's a lot more character than what the trailers initially made him out to look. And that's pretty much all I can say, really. But yeah, no, I thought he was great.
Yeah, I thought... Oh, you want to go?
Okay. No, Ryan Gosling's character, very complex, I would say, during the film. He is the main character who we follow throughout the entire film. And as far as acting is concerned, I mean, I haven't seen him pull in a bad performance at any point in time. I know that George would disagree with me on that. But yeah, seriously, he is on a hot streak at the moment as far as his films are concerned.
Notebook.
With the amazing La La Land, and now this. As far as yeah, no, there isn't really much more I can say without spoiling anything. This is difficult.
One thing.
Have you ever seen Gangster Squad, Tate?
Yes, I have, and I think he was okay in that film.
Who else was in Gangster Squad?
Shia LaBeouf,
No,
Emma Stone.
Yeah, you go.
No, Emma Stone was, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Lawless, aren't I?
Emma Stone wasn't Lawless.
I'm thinking of Lawless, but yeah.
One question I'll ask, and maybe this will be better served for the spoiler section, but in terms of the main character of Ryan Gosling compared to Harrison Ford as the main character in the first one, do you think this established a better sense of character and more drive to the character? Like there was more, no pun intended, like more to do with the character, like they fleshed him out more compared to the characters.
I connected more to his character than I did to Deckard.
Yeah, I think everyone would. Deckard's a bit of an asshole. If you actually look at the character, like he basically tries to rape an AI robot in the first film. And you are introduced to the world of Blade Runner with him when you're going on the scenes. You are with him, whereas this, it's you already know the world. Now it's about what else they're doing with it. And also, this one's 40 minutes longer, which means they can do a lot more, especially when his character arc is about. I always said Han Solo. Then it's about Deckard. Deckard, yeah.
Deckard.
God, when I think of Deckard, all I could think of is Shaw from Fast and Furious. That's not really. But yeah, I think Gosling had a better story arc across both films, but I'd imagine that they wrote it that way. Yeah. I'd imagine when they adapted the original book for the first film, Deckard was a key character, but there's so much more they had to do. Whereas in this, it was how do we connect to how do we fill the dots in while adding in this story element. And I think that's what it helped do in the second film. Second film, you can always get a lot more character development. And I feel that by having an original character at the centerpiece of it, that really did help.
Yeah. And I'll say as well, like the first film, I know you guys sort of like came up with your own reason why you still don't mind the whole Deckard-Rachel relationship in the first one. I didn't like it because to me it's like that was the emotional centerpiece of the movie and it didn't make me feel any emotion for them as a couple in that first film. In this one, and we'll go into it more later on in the review, but there is sort of like a romance angle they do with Ryan Gosling's character. And I felt it in this movie, and I completely bought that relationship, that romance in there. And I think that was something that was lacking in the first film, and I felt like they amended it in this one. Let's talk Harrison Ford then. So Harrison Ford recently been notoriously sort of like retiring off all his characters. We thought he had with Indiana Jones, but there's another Indiana Jones movie coming out in 2020 now, isn't it? Yeah. We've had obviously Star Wars The Force Awakens with Han Solo, and now we've got Deckard in this one. I thought this was probably the best performance I've seen Harrison Ford turn in a long time. Like, you could tell, as you said, Joe, at the start, like he was invested in this one. This was a story he wanted to tell. This was a conclusion to a character he wanted to do, not probably just so that he could break away from the franchise forever, like with Star Wars, and he's free now. He's a free man.
Spoilers.
Could it still be a spoiler after 2 years?
I think with this character role, I think he has a personal collection more than Star Wars and more than, I would say, Indiana Jones, which he's going to be retiring as well. I think that's because he's only ever done one of these films. And I know that Star Wars, he's part of the bigger picture. He's not the only character there. And therefore, he may not feel as attached. With Indiana Jones, sure, it's his thing. But we then also have the fact that he's like made 3 good films and then 1 terrible film in that franchise. With this film, I feel like it's one of the ones that he can retire, which was pure to start and pure to finish.
I don't know. I think with Indiana Jones, he said that he'd come back as many times as they want him to do for Indiana Jones.
Yeah, I think it's different to a retirement with this because he only did 1. Whereas like Star Wars was like 4 films, Indiana Jones 4, Fifth Coming. I mean, Air Force One, like didn't Gary Oldman end up in one of them? Like, haven't there been loads of? It's still the same characters, isn't it? Like Jack Ryan.
I think so. Yeah, I haven't seen any of those films.
It's very different to talk about this, and obviously I don't know the reason why he originally took on Blade Runner, but I think it was something he was probably intrigued by, wanting to work with Ridley Scott, that kind of stuff. While we're getting away from the Star Wars and with this. It's such a weird one with him, but there was something different about his performance in this. Also, the main thing that had me is he limps in this. This isn't a spoiler. And I was just wondering, that's from when he broke his leg on the set of episode 7. I genuinely didn't know, and because he was walking with a pretty bad limp. But because I don't really see Harrison Ford as the man that would intentionally choose to act something like that, like he couldn't be bothered. But I enjoyed him in this, and I like what they did with his character. Very, very similar to Star Wars until the twist happens, which I can't really talk about yet.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually. But I get what you mean, though, Tate. But actually, no, I can't even say with that final word because that's a spoiler as well.
This is so difficult.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to keep this like really vague right now, but what I liked about it as well is, and this is more down to Villeneuve and sort of the screenwriters and everything. I think it's the original screenwriters of the original Blade Runner still, isn't it? So you've got that continuation there. The question, and I'm not even going to go into spoilers on the original Blade Runner here for anyone who hasn't seen it. I know we did a review on it, but there are questions tied to Deckard's character in the first Blade Runner film and a big mystery surrounding him and who he is that I thought were going to get a defining answer in this film. But Villeneuve still kept it very much ambiguous. So for those that see Deckard in a certain way, you can still, attach that meaning to this film. And if you think about him in another way, you've got that as well. It's still kept very open-ended, and I like that they did that. Yeah. That was very smart, I thought.
So do I, but that's called a spoiler, Chris.
Yes. That was very vague. That was very vague.
For people who've seen the film, it was not very vague, but for people who haven't seen this film, it might seem vague. Let's talk about Jared Leto.
Yes.
Honka, huh?
Goes Honka.
Oscar-winning Jared Leto.
Oscar-winning Jared Leto.
Is he the only Oscar winner in this film?
Oh.
Because Ryan Gosling definitely didn't win it in La La Land. I don't think Harrison Ford. I don't think Harrison Ford ever got one. I think got nominated.
Right. Yeah.
Wait, just checking. No, Edward James Olmos has been nominated for 1 Oscar. Not 1.
No, winning. Oscar winning.
Wait a sec.
I don't think Ford hasn't ever won.
Technically,
no, he hasn't.
Robin Wright's won a Golden Globe. There's got to be someone.
I thought Leto was great in this film. Honestly,
I liked him for the scenes he was in. He was
maybe not as in the movie as much as I thought he was based on the trailers.
Yeah,
he's very much a background character. Then
he's kind of like that classic ensemble cast character where there's a name that's not in it much, but he leaves an impact on the scenes he's in. And I can say the rest in spoilers because this is tough.
If you're going to compare him to a character, it's like the Tyrell Corporation essentially from the first one.
Yeah.
This is kind of like the new, darker, more evil version of that corporation, I would say. But he gets some great monologues in this film. He gets some great moments. The one thing that I was sort of let down by, and we're not going to talk about them in depth right now, especially because George hasn't seen them, but they released a series of 3 prequel films beforehand, the lead up of a couple of months until the release of Blade Runner 2049. The first film of which was based on Jared Leto's character. It's kind of an introduction to the world. It sort of bridges the gap between the events of the first movie and this one. And in all honesty, that Jared Leto scene there was probably my favorite more than any scene that he had in the movie. Not to say he's bad in the movie at all, but I felt like that was more inspiring.
And this isn't a big spoiler or even really a spoiler at all, but that's really the biggest interaction that he really has in anything.
Yeah.
When he's kind of in the pre-short where he's showing off his invincible, or not invincible, but
obedient.
Obedient. Replicants.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was quite hard to get out.
We'll get there.
Like in the film, he is quite vague. He is quite mysterious, and the scenes that he's in, he commands them definitely. And sure, it's one of those. Yeah, sure, I would have liked to have seen more of him in the film. I kind of expected more from him in the film. But that was because a lot of the promotional material we saw, he was heavily advertised to be in said film. Yeah. He has a decent amount of screen time. But maybe a little bit more would have enhanced the character. A little bit more in, I'd say, him seem more like the villain he was advertised to be.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
He's playing that kind of role of like a godlike character, a creator, everything like that. And you've got all the themes tied to that, which we'll go into in spoilers. I think that there's loads of other cast members as well, but if we literally just talk about the cast all day, then we're going to be here on it all the time.
We'll talk about a bit more of the cast in the spoiler section.
So we've touched on music, we've touched on cinematography. Do we want to talk direction at all, or do we want to go straight on to
direction really goes with the cinematography and the world building with this film. I think this film was directed to suit the cinematography and to suit the world building that was needed, to make it seem like a futuristic version of the previous film. There was nothing overly spectacular. There was some cool transition shots, but other than that, it was just a solid kind of background thing, and the cinematography itself was just awe-inspiring. It was ridiculous.
I think for direction in this, what I took away from it the most was that you could tell the respect that Denis Villeneuve had for this film. I think he even did a statement a few months before saying something like, don't get like, this isn't going to be compared to the first Blade Runner film by any stretch of the imagination. Like, he prepared audiences for that. He said, don't go in with the intention of comparing it so much to the first one, which I think is unavoidable anyway when you've got a sequel. But he said that this is its own thing set in the same universe. I'm paraphrasing, but I think it was something along those lines. And I respect him for saying that, because you can tell that that film, like many filmmakers, probably had a huge influence on many of his films, basically on like any sci-fi film, more or less, post 1982. But now he's done this. Now, as a viewer, like, I can say he can take a property that's 30 plus years old, do a sequel to it all those years later, and still make it good. I don't think it's better than the first one. I don't think anything ever will be, but it's up there in terms of good sequels. It's up there. Maybe with, I don't want to bring up Empire Strikes Back and stuff like that, or Godfather Part 2 and things like that, but I definitely think it's in the countdown, maybe of top 5. I want to know what he's going to do next now, because there's all these talks that maybe he'll do a Bond film, maybe he'll do Dune or anything like that. Literally anything this guy can direct.
There's just been an announcement at New York Comic Con. Sorry, this isn't about Blade Runner, but Batman, the animated series, is coming to Blu-ray next year.
Oh,
that was sorry, it's irrelevant, but that was my reaction. It wasn't anything to do with Blade Runner.
I will definitely
Speaking of what Denis Villeneuve should do next, see, I was originally going to say, Bond, but now I'm saying Tron Legacy, not Tron Legacy, the Tron reboot after watching this.
Yeah.
Jared Leto has apparently been targeted for it. He's already in this. There are orange lights on some of the cars that literally look like a scene from Tron. So get him on the Tron. Go on, Disney. I dare you to sack this man. No, I'm joking. It's going to be Bond or Cleopatra, isn't it? I really hope it's Bond. I don't give a fuck about Cleopatra.
Mm-hmm.
The way he can build tension and does his... In this film, he only uses action when it's a necessity.
Yeah.
And that I want to see in a Bond film. I mean, if you called, what's his name? Ryan Gosling, James Bond in this film, the first 40 minutes to an hour and a half is him investigating stuff.
And it's also working with Batista again. So
yes, Mr. Hinks, we can have another fight. But I feel that if he did a Bond film, he's worked with Sony, he can build tension. When he delivers and needs to action, it worked. It'd be like Skyfall in the sense Skyfall had an action set piece at the end because it only really needed to be at the end rather than always classic. Look, a fight scene. Daniel Craig moves to the next room. Oh, a fight scene. Moves to the next room. Oh, look, a fight scene. Less of that, and I think Villeneuve can make a very, very good Bond film. Mm-hmm. And obviously, Roger Deakins has worked on Bond films, so why not get him again?
It's funny enough, in one of the fight scenes in this film, they literally move to the next room.
That's in the trailer as well, so that's not a spoiler.
But if we're talking about...
a replica... I almost got quit out there.
You will shut up, George.
Overall opinions. I really want to talk...
No.
Go on.
Denis Villeneuve. I didn't really know about the Cleopatra film, but if he was going to direct the Cleopatra film, I would definitely take Ana de Armas for Cleopatra in that film. If he's taking an actress...
Got to be Egyptian. Got to be Egyptian,
not Cuban.
Here's the thing. Do you know who is top hunting billing at the moment? Kind of thing. Who they're looking for? They want Angelina Jolie.
I know. Yeah, she's been talked about. No, I don't.
I'm going to be more intrigued by this. How is Sony going to get product placement in a Cleopatra film?
It'll be like engraved on the side of a pyramid or something. Like
no, it'll be written in hieroglyphics.
Yeah.
Actually, that would spell out Sony.
If they did that would be actually pretty cool. I'd be fine with that if they did it that way. Overall opinion.
It'd be subconsciously telling you to buy Sony.
Yes. Overall opinions for me. One thing I really wanted to talk about as well, because I think it's worth noting, the movie poster for this film I really hate. It's such a minute, nitpicky thing. But the two posters that were released for Blade Runner, the one on the Final Cut DVD case and the actual movie poster, are by far one of my favorite movie posters ever. I like that style. I like how Force Awakens used that sort of Drew Struzan art style. I don't think he did the Blade Runner poster, but something in that similar style I'd have liked. They just go with a typical orange and blue combination, which is in like every single video game now and just seems to be everywhere. Seems kind of lazy. It's just one of those Photoshop ones, just throw all the characters on. Overall opinions on the movie, though, this is by far probably one of the best films of the year. Doesn't quite get to the level of the first Blade Runner film for me, although I think in terms of the narrative, it's a lot more richer. I think they delve into character a lot more, and there seems to just be genuinely more at stake. But I just have that attachment to the first Blade Runner film that I can't shake, and I think that was the one that established the world, essentially, and I think it did a better job of that in the first film. Great performances all around, but I will say, if you've seen the trailer, if you're a fan of sort of like high octane, like action, sci-fi and all that, I'd be wary of this film. It's a long sit. I think some of the pacing may slow down towards the middle act and may throw a lot of people off. If you like slow burn sci-fi, if you've seen the first Blade Runner film, then you know what you're getting in for. If you like R-rated sci-fi or sort of the more intellectual side of sci-fi, then this is the film for you. But go in with those warning signs there if you like the action sci-fi genre more. But yeah, outstanding achievement and probably one of the best films of the year.
This did something which I wasn't expecting to happen so soon. It actually topped out Mother for my favorite film of the year so far. It's my favorite film of the year at the moment. I think it has everything that you could ask for a film. It's a brilliant sequel to the original, and something that was so unnecessary to start off with has become one of my favorite sci-fi pieces of the last 5 years.
Mhm.
I thoroughly enjoyed this film. It's a million times better than I thought it would be, especially going off what I was leaving in the build-up. And it's left me It has left me wanting more from Blade Runner.
There are places it could go to, I think.
I don't want more, but the potential is there. And I'm not saying do it, but if you're going to bring in Denis Villeneuve, do it, then you know what? Go for it. You didn't really hear that from me. But this is probably my second best film of the year so far. It's very strong. And I'm excited. I don't know when I'm going to be able to do it, or I've got to wait till Blu-ray. I'm very excited to see this again because I think this will be a lot like the original, that it will improve with time. And I can't wait to experience that again. However, I'm gutted that I missed the IMAX for it.
Yeah, and I think they're only doing 3D, aren't they, in the UK?
Yeah, because they're twats.
Because I think this has made a sort of it's going to make its budget back, but I think it has been fairly lukewarm in terms of its box office taking so far. And obviously, the first Blade Runner film was like that in that it didn't really take off until home video, and then it got more of a cult following. So it will be interesting to see if this film does that. But this film ended, and I mean, it was like a 3-hour slog, so I was glad that I could like get up and stretch my legs and everything like that. But I would like to give this film a second viewing. I think this is like the first film, maybe not so much as the first film, but I think multiple viewings will help this movie definitely. So that'll do it for our spoiler-free section. We are now moving into spoilers. So a final warning to anyone who hasn't seen Blade Runner 2049 and you do want to check it out, even if you're remotely curious.
Because we're gonna go straight in. By the way, guys, we are literally going to spoil basically the first half of the film straight from the
and the ending.
Buy his coat for £140.
See, don't buy the whiskey, George. Buy the coat because winter is almost here, and the coat will come in handy.
Yeah, but winter is almost here, and the whiskey will come in handy.
Yes, it actually would. Yeah.
Okay, guys, we're now going to spoil the first.
Can I be the one that says it?
Film.
Go on,
George. Go ahead.
Ryan Gosling is a fucking replicant.
Yes.
Ryan Gosling is a replicant.
And you get that in the first 5 minutes.
Yes. And this is how...
Yes, you did.
Take note, Ryan Johnson. This is how Episode 8 should be doing Rey's parentage. Straight up, him versus Batista.
So what we're saying is...
Do it in the first scene.
We're saying Rey's parents are replicants?
No, what we're saying is they should tell us who's Rey's parents are in the first 5 minutes.
Ray is a replicant?
It would have been too easy to have had the "you're a replicant" right at the end of the film. Do it at the start in the first scene, but because it's a pretty hard-hitting moment. It's like, oh, like you skin turned, you know, you shit. Basically, you're a shit replicant. Basically, says
turncoat. You skin turncoat.
Yeah, and I absolutely had loved it because I sat there thinking, hey, this isn't just Batista. This is a replicant. He would have crushed him by now. Then you realize, well, actually, if he's one, then they're both, I guess, got their own super strength and stuff. Especially when he keeps like elbowing like Batista's like neck joints. I loved the whole. It felt like a sort of. I mean, I know the original Blade Runner is film noir, but sci-fi. It felt out at the start, the whole investigation scene, sitting in there watching the cooker.
It reminds me of like a western, like a really slow burn western, like sort of. Each one knows they're going to make a move at some point, but it's that tension and the sound of the room, and I love that.
I thought the opening was great, and I like with Batista. Take time that I'm a big fan of his away from acting as well, and I've loved since he's gone into acting. I've liked the project since he got Bond. I was like, Bond was an interesting step for him, and when he got announced Blade Runner, I was very intrigued because you knew he'd have a physical presence because look at the size of him. But I liked what they did, that he was older, he was jaded, he had the glasses, he was basically in retirement. And although he's in it for one scene, I liked his story arc. And I know he's got his sort of...
he is a huge...
He's got his own little thing of the online YouTube thing, which I will be watching after. But how do I describe him? I think they got the right person for the role for this. And he's once again shown that it wasn't the most dramatic of pieces, but he worked for what the director wanted to do with this.
I mean, compare his performance in this to Drax the Destroyer, for example, from Guardians of the Galaxy. Like,
there's nothing here.
He
looks bigger here as well.
Yeah.
He does.
The prequel film for me, again, like I watched them literally like just before I set out to the cinema. The Batista one is the second film. Really good short film, but there was nothing that really connected the elements of that to his character in this film, which I guess is kind of a good thing because you can go into this film and see him for the character that he just is from the beginning of this film. But if you do go out of your way to make these prequel films and you do want that connective tissue between the two, I felt that was lacking slightly with his character in this.
I'd say because he doesn't have much screen time, so we can't really judge fully his acting, but for what he serves, he does a good job. His best scenes are on the screen, not in the short film. His impact on the entire story, because he is basically the catalyst for the entire story, him being hunted down by Ryan Gosling's character, Ryan Gosling then searching the surrounding premises and starting off the mystery of what's under the tree, what's in the box, what's the date to do with, and everything that goes past there. But anyway, he's an interesting character, and it would be nice to see a little bit more of him. But I feel like he served his purpose well for the plot of the film.
Yeah. We need to talk more about Ryan Gosling, so now we can finally go into it a little bit more. His home and his work life. What I really liked is you still have that huge stigma attached to replicants in general. Like, they're more ingratiated into our world now. Like, they're still trying to retire the old models of them, but in terms of like the new models under the leadership of Jared Leto's character, I think his name is Wallace, then they're more available in civilization now. But there is still like this huge race, can I call it racism? Like, there's that huge stigma attached to replicants in general. Like, there's graffiti on his wall, like "fuck off, skin job" and things like that.
They're not gonna like, they're gonna write on his wall and stuff like that, but they're not gonna like attack him or anything like that, are they?
No. And I mean, even the people at his workplace, like his boss is very tolerant, but she does still talk down to him like, you don't have a soul, you're better that way. The guy at the morgue just straight up like is racist as shit towards replicants, calling him skin job and everything like that. But his home life was really interesting to me because with Deckard, you get this very sort of jaded, weathered, depressed, alcoholic kind of character. And you do get the impression of this with Ryan Gosling that he is depressed also, although he doesn't really show much emotion as he is a replicant. The fact that he's got a holographic girlfriend, essentially. I didn't know she was going to be a hologram. I like how they kept that secret, and that's really smart that the trailers showed a lot of moments from the film, but also essentially showed nothing. So a lot was still a surprise with this film. I thought that was
they showed a lot of moments of her, but they didn't show her as a hologram.
Yeah.
And it did throw me to start off with. I was like, oh, is she going to become human at some point or something like that? But no, she stayed a hologram throughout the entire film. And as far as like breakout performances, because she hasn't done much before, I believe she was in War Dogs, but not a major part of it. But as far as big kind of acting roles are concerned, this was good. This was very good. She played a convincing character as a hologram and as a person who truly does care for Ryan Gosling's character. And you kind of grow to adore her throughout the entire film. She's a character you can truly get behind. And unlike the previous relationship in the previous Blade Runner film, you agree with this one. You can kind of get behind it.
Yeah. And
it adds a whole new layer to Gosling's character. In the fact that he does have something to almost fight for, whereas Deckard's character, he was fighting for his own kind of selfish means in the end.
And we've talked about this as well, how we drew comparisons to the film Her with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson. Very similar ideals and themes expressed between that film into this one, but this film did it in a different way, sort of made her more of a physical presence, which I think, I've only seen Her once. I think that's an element of that film that they tried to do. There's a moment in this film.
In Her, there's a moment in the film where they stick a small little camera on like a mole on this woman's head, and Scarlett Johansson's character is able to kind of visualize what is happening and is able to kind of tell the person what to do and stuff like that, and it doesn't end well. But with this film, they have, I'd say, almost a similar scene, but completely different, where they get the character of Mariette, like a prostitute, to come and basically be the body for Joy's character. And it is a phenomenal scene. It really is. It was the first scene in the film to give me full-on goosebumps. I was starting to well up. It was truly stunning, cinematography-wise, pacing-wise, everything. It was the first moment that the music had truly kicked in for me, and the first time that if I was going to go back and listen to the soundtrack, I would go and pinpoint that song out particularly. But that was probably one of my favorite moments of the film. Only compared to really the ending.
I dug the AI relationship. If you couldn't get any weirder from Harrison Ford impregnating a replicant, yes, we're in the spoiler section now. Then
he was a replicant anyway.
How about a replicant? Really... How about it's not official yet. How about a replicant having sex with a prostitute in front of to have an AI body on the top?
It's like that overlay filter, isn't it? Like
yeah, it was really creepy and blurry.
Is that part of the new iPhone X?
No, the next iPhone, they'll take away the phone bit. It would just be the eye. I love the fact that even when they did these holograms, it wasn't perfectly visible on top of the head. Like it was still out of sync and bits like that felt right to that degree. But I thought the ratio was weird, but I got it. It reminded me a lot of the app film with Scarlett Johansson. Joaquin Phoenix. I was like, oh look, it's this in holographic form, and it leads to quite a well. I didn't have any emotional response to it crushing the USB at the end. It looks like was it like the magic wands that tried to be a thing?
Oh, I did.
That's interesting, George, because I didn't have an emotional response either. Because as soon as they said, I need to transfer over to this little disc. Just remember, if anything happens to this little disc, I'll be gone forever. As soon as they said that, I literally turned to my friend and just said, yeah, nah, she's dead.
Yeah.
It was one of those obvious moments that took away any of the emotion from the scene. And I kind of got emotional in what we would call the sex scene, even though there was no real sex shown.
Yeah, I wasn't emotional during that day. No one gets as emotional as you down there.
I didn't get emotional at the moment where the USB stick was snapped.
It just got emotional when the USB stick got raised.
It made me shocked because I cared about this relationship when it snapped. And I mean, in this
I knew
film,
she was gone.
Yeah. But we talked about in the first film how there isn't really a clear-cut bad guy. Like, it's a very sort of like morally grey film. In this one, you straight up have a henchman.
Oh, no, I'd say, I mean, let's be honest here, Harrison Ford is the problem in both films. You kill Harrison Ford, then all the problems go away. So technically, he is the villain of both films.
No, that's like saying if you kill Harry Potter, their problems go away. It's making them villain.
No, because Voldemort kind of takes over the world. But like, let's be honest, the first flavor in a film, if you get rid of Harrison Ford, the replicants can run free and live out their lives.
No, they can't. There's a war.
Well, there isn't a war as such.
It's about to be.
No.
They'll blend in more.
No, in the second film, if you kill Harrison Ford, then the secret does not get released of who his kid is, and the replicants can start to gain their rights.
The replicants already know who the kid is.
I did actually like that though. How was it Robin Wright? Did we say how Ryan Gosling's boss in this, the police force, doesn't want chaos to spread to the city? Like, you can kind of see where she's coming from. It's sort of like the whole Harvey Dent thing in The Dark Knight, how you're better to lie and not say anything at all to maintain a constant order. But no, I liked that. I liked how you had the different sides, like humanity's side and then replicants with the more human than human, whatever the slogan was from the first film. I think we should talk a little bit about the whole baby thing then now, because we need to give some context to it. So throughout the film, we learned that Rachel from the first movie gave birth to... initially, we think it's a son, and we naturally assume, as a viewer, you think, oh, it's Ryan Gosling. He has these visions similar to how Deckard did in the movie, depending on which cut you watch, like the unicorn in the first film. He has one of like a child being chased into a furnace. It's not lit or anything. He's chased by kids, and he's got like a little toy wooden horse, and he hides it. And he's dealing with this like crisis of identity. Like, does he belong? Is he the son of Deckard? He needs to find his father. He needs to find all that stuff. But then they completely throw you for a loop and introduce a plot twist in the middle of the movie, which I really appreciate, because I was thinking like, oh, it's going to be the whole father and son thing. We've seen this done to death. We've now technically saw this 3 times in the last few Harrison Ford films. But I like how they changed it up. They did keep me constantly guessing, like Ryan Gosling's character in the film, and I like that.
It was the moment of and when we find her, and it was just his face drops, and he thought, I was the one, and they were like, we all thought we were the one. And I think the line was, it's better to die for a cause worth living for. I think is the line that is similar to. I mean, if we're going to compare it to any line from the first one, it's the Tears and Rain speech, isn't it? That's really the only big monologue of the film that is worth noting outside of Jared Leto and his many monologues.
But that was the plot point of the film that I referred to earlier, where it doesn't really get any payoff, because we see this whole underground network, essentially, of replicants that are waiting to rise to be accepted into the world, for this truth to come out that replicants can now breed. And actually, I don't know if this was said in the film. Does it mean that if a human's with a replicant, that's the only way they can give birth? Or
no, Chris. Rachel was the only replicant that gave birth. She was the one that was perfected. They said Tyrell perfected like conception and everything like that. It was his final masterpiece, and he only made one copy, and that was Rachel.
Yeah, I was going to say, because he always said as well in the original film that Rachel was a prototype.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And because of that, if the secret got out that they could give birth, it could give rights to the replicants, and therefore it would start an uprising in that way, shape, or form. It's not that every single replicant can now give birth.
Oh, okay.
And that's why Jared Leto wanted a stranglehold on the industry. He wanted his basically his replicants who were very obedient, and so he could sell them out in the masses. If he has any form of complication, any form of rebellion, then his business goes to shreds. Hence why he killed the one which he created with the womb.
Yeah.
In that weird scene with her being born and then dying within like the space of 10 minutes. And he said, "You have a womb," and then kind of cut her and stuff like that. So that's kind of the reasoning behind the underground uprising.
Mm-hmm. But it's something I did think would sort of like come to a head at the end, and it never really did. But when I think about it now, in hindsight, I like that Harrison Ford really is the only person that knows. It's Ryan Gosling and Harrison Ford, and obviously Ryan Gosling sort of sacrifices himself just so that Harrison Ford can retain this knowledge and no one else can have it. So maybe that's not a negative, but definitely the Jared Leto thing for me. The character doesn't really get any kind of resolution at all. They kill the henchman and they don't deal with the main bad guy. At least in the first one with like Tyrell, you have oh god, what's his name?
Rutger
Hauer. You have Roy Batty. You have the whole bit where he kills him, where he like pokes his eyes out. In this one, Jared Leto just kind of disappears out of the movie and they forget about him, which I do think is a problem. I would have liked to have seen some kind of closure to his character, or maybe they're setting up for a sequel. Exactly,
sequel. I think maybe give it maybe 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be a sequel.
The problem is, if they do sequels, it needs to be set straight after, because there's another half of that story to tell. But I want them to do it, but then I don't want them to do it. It's that situation.
Yeah.
I think we could talk a little bit more about Harrison Ford and Rachel in this movie, I think.
Yes, because actually, let's talk about just cameos in general from the first film, because they brought back Edward James Olmos as Gaff for one scene, and he made like a... it's quite interesting. He made a paper buffalo, and I was surprised he didn't make a paper horse, but I'm assuming that's because maybe he... who knows? Edward James Olmos' character just knows everything, but we knows nothing at the same time. It was nice to see him again, even though he is getting on in his age. Rachel's cameo, I was searching it up. It was they brought in an actress by the name of Lauren Peter for some shots and use of CGI to make her appear, as she did in 1982. Archival footage and photos and audio of her performance in the original film were also used to further the plot.
The effects were incredible in that part. Like, if that's what they can achieve now, then...
She looked exactly the same, except she didn't have green eyes and got shot in the face.
That was one of my... I love that interaction between Harrison Ford and Jared Leto in the film, but that one line really stood. It's basically Jared Leto saying, like, we have ways that we can torture you without inflicting physical harm on you, and he brings in that copy of Rachel. Harrison Ford's performance there was fantastic, and it's just that where, gets shot in the head, she had green eyes. I do think this, although still all the problems that I have with the relationship with him and Rachel in the first movie are absolutely still there. I don't think the relationship's founded on good foundations in that first film. But do you think this film slightly helped it a little, or helped you believe in that relationship a little bit more?
It helped me believe that even though it started purely out of inevitability, and now we start to think, well, was Harrison Ford made as a person who was brought in to impregnate her?
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of train of thought that goes with that. If he was, then it was inevitable that he had to kind of get her to sleep with him somehow. She was saying that she had to leave, she had to go, so he blocked her and he kind of forced himself on her. If we look at it the other way, it's inevitability. She knows the only way to survive is being with him, and therefore when she's in that situation where he doesn't let her go, she kind of has to go along with it. Otherwise, she's going to be retired, shall we say, by the Blade Runner.
I don't think she got pregnant by the rape scene.
No, she didn't. What I'm saying is, Harrison Ford's character may have been created as a replicant to impregnate her.
Yeah, that's to continue the ambiguity of the character.
Harrison Ford is a drunk asshole of a character. Rachel knows that she has to get out of there. As soon as he blocks the door to her, she knows, well, here are my two options. I either do what he says or he's going to retire me. I want to survive. I want to live. That's the whole point of that film. Replicants wanting to live. So she has to go along with that scene.
Yeah. There's something else I wanted to bring up about.
But from there, that may have blossomed a relationship in the worst of situations. Mm-hmm. I mean, let's look at Watchmen for an example. That is the entire ending of that film is based around a rape that ends in something beautiful in the end, which they say. But yeah, no, that's how I kind of interpret it.
Right now.
I was just trying to remember Watchmen, which the book or the well, it's basically like topics at the end. But yeah.
Could we talk about the initial fight with Ryan Gosling and Harrison Ford in this film?
Can we talk about? I love one of my favorite things about this is yes, you got that weird hentai Japanese shit they plaster all over it, but oh no, I've lost my headphones there. Hold on. When we get to the New York stuff, not New York, Las Vegas, it's fucking sick having the holograms of like the old school like we get Elvis, Marilyn Monroe pops up, we get Frank Sinatra, and that's the things that I love because in this day and age you can put that in a film and you couldn't put that in 1982, and that it just created so much more to the sort of Blade Runner world. I absolutely adore that, but that fight scene was great, especially when you get the real life backstory of it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you want to give that backstory for anyone?
Yeah. They were obviously I want to say there's not one punch. There's about 5, 6 punchings. Harrison Ford punching Ryan Gosling, and in Harrison Ford's eyes, 99 out of the 100 times we did it, I didn't make contact. But they've now released the image of Ryan Gosling actually being punched, and it is fucking hilarious. Like you've got Harrison Ford with like a slight bit of regret in his eyes, and Ryan Gosling's like, oh shit. But the fight scene itself, that's one of my favorite scenes because, you know, he's like, I'm not going to hurt you, and Harrison Ford just keeps punching him until he realizes that, oh shit, he's actually not going to come and kill me. I loved it. It felt random, but it worked, and it was quite a funny moment, albeit serious and important at the same time. And it's the fact that at this point, Ryan Gosling thinks it's his dad.
Yeah, I like how that scene progressed, because although sort of Deckard's been laying dormant for pretty much 30 years or at least 20 years. He's been on the run for so long that he's set up base here. He's still on top of his game. He's still the old Blade Runner that he was. He's still got all the tricks of the trade, and he seems to be perfectly matched against Kay's character in this film. And then just as the fight goes on, it doesn't quite get to they live territory, but the fight goes on and on where both of them are just like, what are we playing at? Like, just stop.
By the way, if you want to see the image, there you go. That's it. Look at it.
Can you zoom in a bit more, Tate, on that, or?
I don't think I can. I can try. Here we go. Look at that. He's getting absolutely walloped, and you have his shocked face in the background just to make up for everything, which makes it even funnier.
Harrison Ford's face is an absolute picture. The holographic dog. So the ultimate question I have after this film, was the dog a hologram?
No, it's real. You don't do holograms of dogs.
Yeah.
Well,
he's just gone through a fallout on it.
Was it artificial?
Well, there's no replicant dog business yet, so no.
There was an owl in the first movie. There was snakes. There was other animals. So
yeah, this dog drinks whiskey, mate. It's not fake.
It's Las Vegas. I think this would be a very
that dog is living the life, man.
It gets fucking blown up and you see its body fly across the room. I don't think a regular dog would get up after that. But anyway, that's the question.
I completely forgot about that.
Put that to the people in the comments. I guess we talk about the end now.
The ending now.
And yeah, and we can wrap up.
The scene between Love, who ends up being the main villain, she goes and kills the head police officer woman in a very brutal manner. And then after all of it is done, she takes Harrison Ford, is saying that we're going to send him off to an off-world colony where we're basically going to torture you forever until you tell us where your kid is. Because at that stage, they don't know it's a woman. And we have a fight scene which happens like in the air to start off with, then it gets grounded, and then I'd say that this fight scene wasn't the strongest part of the movie as far as action is concerned. I think a lot of it was in the dark.
It felt low-key for an ending.
It felt very low-key compared to the first films. Compared to the first film's ending, where it's on top of a building and you feel like he could fall off at any point. At this film, I didn't feel like any of the characters could have drowned at any point. I didn't feel like any of the characters were in overly amounts of danger at any point or anything like that.
I would agree with that. I think, yeah.
Oh yeah,
it wasn't the strongest part of the. It would have been more interesting to have it take place in the dam or on the launch pad, maybe near the edge or something like that. And I wouldn't. Here's the thing: I liked the fact that this film didn't have an ending monologue in that sense, but at the same time, I really would have liked an ending monologue of some sort from the main villain. All we got was "I win, bitch," and then walking off and everything like that. But yeah,
it felt. I liked Love's character, but she felt it's just that really cliched henchman role. We've got to kill Boss A to eventually get to Boss B, but unfortunately in the film we don't get to Boss B. Like it's a very low key ending, and I like that because Blade Runner shouldn't be this big action spectacle. Even the ending of the first one, although it's probably a bit more. It's definitely a lot more. What's the word I'm looking for? You've essentially got Rutger Hauer pursuing Deckard, and it's full of tension. Like he could get to him at any point.
Yeah.
Before it all comes to a head, you get the monologue, and you understand why he was doing it. This one, it's just kind of like Harrison Ford might possibly drown. You've got a punching, slanging match between Ryan. I was going to say Ryan Reynolds, then Ryan Gosling and Love's character, and then it kind of ends after that. I will say, though, the ending on the staircase, and we get the reprise of Tears in Rain, Vangelis' song from the original Blade Runner.
Yeah, I teared up at that.
Really
I'm not going to lie.
Touch. And I don't
teared
know
up at that moment.
I don't know if that was because of my attachment to Ryan Gosling's character or the fact that I was hearing that music again and I had that emotional connection to the first film. I don't know. I'll have to give the film another watch.
It was a bit of both. It was a bit of both. I think this is a character who, unlike the first film, you don't love Rutger Hauer, but he makes a brilliant kind of speech, and he makes it seem like, even though you didn't always agree with his character, it was worth it. Mm-hmm. With this character, you liked him all the way throughout the entire film. You see him sacrifice so much for this cause, only to kind of die meters away from basically the answer, the redemption. And
I think he was fulfilled, though. He fulfilled his task.
He fulfilled it. He fulfilled his task. He basically took the words from the people who were making the uprising to die for a cause that is worth living for. And it was a very poetic end to his character for him to just lay down the steps. I would have liked him to maybe have just kind of a word, maybe even Harrison Ford kind of saying, like, I spoke to a replicant once as they were dying. He talked about like life. No,
that
was what was going through my head at the time.
That's going into Hobbit territory for me. There is a great man known as Strider.
He properly sees it out. Like he took them fucking war wounds and he carried on the rest of his adventure. And then he got to Destination Paradise and he farewelled on the stairs. Started sitting, slowly lies down. Game over. Sad scene. It was probably one of the better scenes. Like it's not like Tears in the Rain, but I had a better emotional investment. Like I love Roy. I'm not saying Ryan Gosling's death is better, but he had a better character arc and journey. Although completely different. Going off what Villeneuve said, that you can't compare the films. They're so different, but there was so much repeats in their death scenes that I really did like it. It was very quick, except that aha, I am the better one. Then he fucking jawsed her and drowned her at the roof. I loved it.
And then
go on.
Really, the final thing I was going to say we could talk about is the person who ends up being the chosen child, shall we say, for the uprising, everything like that. Who earlier on in the film we kind of get told is the chosen child, but you don't really realize it at the time. Where she is a person who creates dreams and she creates memories. And Ryan Gosling's character goes in and asks whether his memories and dreams are real, of the horse in the flame and stuff like that. And she kind of breaks down and starts crying and says, yes, these are real. But now we know that they were real because she knew that she'd seen them before.
And they had that connection because one was the real born child and one was a copy with the genetic material, wasn't it? I think, or the genetic code.
One was basically Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling was the decoy throughout the entire film.
Mm-hmm. But he still had a part to play, and I like that. And actually, his fate at the end of this reminded me of his fate at the end of Drive, in that he gets stabbed, he gets mortally wounded, he carries on, he completes what he needs to, and then it's implied that he probably dies not too long after that. Who wears their war wounds better, though? Caesar from War for the Planet of the Apes or Ryan Gosling in this movie?
Well, Caesar's a naked monkey, and Ryan Gosling has that coat, so...
If Caesar had that coat, or if Bad Ape had that coat. Or was it Good Ape? Good Ape?
Bad Ape.
I forgot his name. Bad Ape. Yeah.
Both scenes saddened me.
Mm-hmm.
Caesar's was a legacy, though.
Yeah.
That'd have been a comparison for what had gone out of
that. I guess we'll finish with final thoughts again. Would you recommend Blade Runner 2049?
Yes, there's literally nothing else out.
That's true.
No.
At least not for 2 weeks.
Goodbye, Christopher Robin was an okay film, and Ninjago was an okay.
Okay.
This
Two
is
okays
a phenomenal
yes,
film.
there you go.
This is one of the best films of the year that you're going to see.
This will be around
probably
Oscar
one
season.
of the best sci-fi films of the year as well. It's going to be nominated for Oscars, of course it is. It may even be nominated for Best Picture. Who knows? We don't know how strong the Oscar categories are going to be this year, but at the moment it doesn't sound very strong from the long-range forecast.
Mm-hmm.
So this does have an outside chance of being nominated for a decent amount, especially in the technical awards categories.
I see Dunkirk versus Blade Runner for technicals.
Do you not see Star Wars then going up for it as well?
I haven't seen Star Wars yet, have I? It won't be up for
but
it would be up for like VFX, the common technicals, but deep down, bias aside, I think it's Blade Runner v Dunkirk. Bias aside, because Dunkirk used less CGI, that's probably going to favour heading into Oscar season. But I think it's a shootout out of these two for the technical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I would ideally, I really want Apes to win Best VFX. That should be they deserve it for the trilogy. But I don't think it will.
It won't win for it, but I forgot to make this point earlier when we were talking about the world building. Earlier this year, we had Ghost in the Shell, the live action film, which was a movie I didn't hate. I thought it was fine. It was as average as you can possibly get for a movie. But I'm going to have to watch Blade Runner again, but I think I enjoyed the city look more of Ghost in the Shell than Blade Runner. It was very similar. You had those like big sweeping holograms and everything like that.
Yeah.
But
funnily enough, I believe it was I can't remember. I think I've referenced this before. The problems with the Ghost in the Shell movie, saying that the city was a character.
Yeah.
In this film, the first Blade Runner film, the city is a character. In this film, the city is a character. In the Ghost in the Shell film earlier in the year, the city is not a character. In the original anime of Ghost in the Shell, which obviously adds some inspiration to this film in the original Blade Runner, you have shots down on street level. The city, I think it's about like 3 minutes long, where they just do shots of the city and just shots of people in the city. And that's what Blade Runner did, and that's what this film starts to do. Maybe not enough in this film on the story than they do on the actual city and the people of the city itself. I mean, talk about the original Blade Runner film. They have the scene where you have the people going from the bicycles just randomly throughout the street. In this film, you don't really have any kind of moment that sticks out in that way. However, the city still feels like it has a personality.
Is that because of the giant hentai robot hologram?
No, it's because the people are interacting. It's a different language. It feels
Precisely.
alive. In Ghost in the Shell, it doesn't feel alive. The city feels like a dead hologram itself.
Is it because the hologram's not trying to have sex with him?
Maybe.
I can't even follow after that. Yeah, it's probably one of the best films of the year. It's a very good sequel. I do have a few flaws with it, and I will stress that concern if people do like a more action-filled science fiction film, and you think that's what you're going to be getting with this one, having seen the trailer. This isn't that film at all. It's incredibly slow burn. It's much like the first Blade Runner film, and I'd say, obviously this is a sequel, watch the first Blade Runner film before you watch this one. I'd say that's almost a requirement, in all honesty. But yeah, that'll do it for our review for Blade Runner 2049. Be sure to comment, subscribe, let us know what you thought of this movie. Did you like it? Didn't you like it? Did you prefer it to the first film? Anything Blade Runner related, please do let us know. In terms of what's coming up on the channel, there will be a couple of reaction videos out in the next couple of days. There was a new Justice League trailer that went up today, which you know I'm going to be all over and doing a reaction for, as well as arguably the biggest trailer of the year, the new Star Wars trailer, The Last Jedi. I'll be on a reaction for that. And I believe we have a date now for Battle of the Brackets.
Apparently it's Wednesday, but
we haven't done the draft or anything yet, so I'm a little concerned if that will be happening on Wednesday. But there is a Battle of the Brackets on the way. We do have the topic, which I guess we can say now will be which is the best remake / reboot ever made. But yeah, well, there'll be more information on that. Check our Facebook and Twitter links. Links to those are in the description down below. I think that's all the updates. Anything else?
We may have a brand new show to debut this week for you all. As you know, there is a Star Wars trailer coming out, and we have Chris's reactions. Don't worry, I'm not doing a reaction. Chris's. Shall I just say it? Because it's not really much to say. When we said in the news, we did something called Trailer Talk, which was too damn long. And we're going to bring it back, not as like a weekly show or anything, for a major trailer. By major, it's like that top tier trailer. Star Wars, Avengers, you know, them kind of A-list things, not the shite like just see. We are discussing the trailer, whether it's a breakdown, discussions on it, our thoughts, just to give that extra bit of detail that I think would be pretty, because it's what we normally do when we chat on Messenger and stuff. So hopefully we've got this coming out this week. The Star Wars trailer is coming out Tuesday morning in English at time and Monday night in America because of your damn NFL crap.
But yeah, so a lot of exciting things happening on the channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell icon, share, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.